Subscribe to Storylab. Now, let's begin this one. Nathan Horn's hands didn't shake anymore, not like they used to in the first year after he left the service. 12 years as an Army Ranger hand-to-hand combat instructor had carved something permanent into his nervous system, a stillness that settled over him when chaos erupted around him. He was wiping down the bar at McGreevy's Tavern, the dive bar he'd bought with his discharge pay 3 years ago, when his phone buzzed against his hip. The number was St. Catherine's Hospital. His stomach dropped before his brain caught up. "Mr. Horn? This is Reba Cervantes from the St. Catherine's Emergency Department. Your son Jacob was brought in about 20 minutes ago. You're listed as his primary emergency contact." Nathan's vision tunneled. "What happened to my son?" "Sir, I can't discuss details over the phone, but you need to come down here immediately. Dr. Mendoza is with him now." He was out the door in 30 seconds, leaving his manager Charlie Gates stammering questions behind him. The 15-minute drive took 8. Nathan's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Jacob was 9 years old, careful and anxious by nature. Nothing like Nathan had been at that age. The divorce 2 years ago had made him even more withdrawn, especially after Josie married Darren Parker 6 months later. Darren. The name tasted like battery acid in Nathan's mouth. The ER automatic doors seemed to move in slow motion. Nathan spotted Reba at the nurse's station, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes that couldn't hide the discomfort in her expression. "Mr. Horn, come with me." She led him down a corridor that smelled of antiseptic and fear. "Your son has bilateral humeral fractures. Both arms are broken. Dr. Mendoza is setting them now, but she paused outside a door. The injuries are consistent with forceful twisting. We've already contacted Child Protective Services." Nathan's blood turned to ice water. "Where's his mother?" "She's been notified. And Mr. Parker is here." The room spun. "Darren's here, in the waiting area. He brought Jacob in." Nathan pushed past her and walked back toward the waiting room with measured steps. Each footfall was a countdown. His training kicked in automatically. Assess the environment, identify targets, control your breathing. Darren Parker sat in a plastic chair near the vending machines, scrolling through his phone. He was a big man, 6'3" and thick through the chest, with the kind of bloated muscle that came from prison yard workouts and steroids. Tattoos crawled up his neck, crude ink that Nathan recognized from gang sets on the South Side. When Darren looked up and saw Nathan, he smiled. That smile would haunt Nathan for weeks. "Horn." Darren stood, rolling his shoulders back. "Glad you could make it." Nathan stopped 6 feet away. "What happened to Jacob?" "Kid's clumsy. Fell down the stairs." Darren's smile widened. "You know how boys are. Weak constitution, just like you probably were. Fell down the stairs." Nathan's voice was flat, dead. "Yeah, crying like a little bitch the whole way to the hospital." Darren took a step closer, and Nathan could smell the alcohol on his breath. Whiskey, cheap stuff. "Your son's a coward, Horn. Pathetic. Honestly, the world would be better off without weak shits like him. He deserves to die." Something in Nathan's chest locked into place like a rifle bolt sliding home. "Parking lot," Nathan said quietly. 5 minutes. Darren's eyes lit up. "Yeah? You want to go, old man?" 5 minutes. "I need to see my son first." Nathan turned and walked back to the emergency room, his heart rate at exactly 60 beats per minute. Reba looked at him with concern, but he moved past her to Jacob's room. Dr. Edwin Mendoza, a tired-looking man in his 50s, was finishing the casts on both of Jacob's arms. Jacob's face was tear-streaked and swollen. When he saw Nathan, fresh tears spilled over. "Dad," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Nathan knelt beside the bed, careful not to jostle the casts. "You have nothing to be sorry for, Jake. Nothing. You understand me." He said I was being disrespectful. "I just asked if I could call you, and he got so mad, Dad. He grabbed my arms and twisted, and I heard them snap, and... Chill. It's okay. You're safe now." Nathan kissed his son's forehead. "I'm going to take care of this." "Mr. Horn," Dr. Mendoza said carefully, "the police are on their way. The injuries are definitely non-accidental. We're keeping Jacob overnight for observation." Nathan nodded. "Good. Don't let his mother take him anywhere until I get back." He walked out of the hospital with the same measured pace. The parking lot was mostly empty. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Darren stood under a flickering light pole, still wearing that smile, cracking his knuckles. "Took you long enough," Darren said. "Josie always said you were soft. Said you couldn't even keep her satisfied. That's why she—" Nathan closed the distance in 3 strides and drove his fist into Darren's solar plexus. The punch wasn't about power. It was about precision. Darren's diaphragm spasmed and his lungs emptied in a shocked wheeze. Before Darren could recover, Nathan swept his leg and drove him face first into the asphalt. The sound of Darren's nose breaking was satisfying in a way that made Nathan hate himself a little. "You broke my son's arms," Nathan said, his knee on Darren's back. "Both of them. He's 9 years old." Darren tried to buck him off, but Nathan shifted his weight and trapped Darren's right arm. He applied pressure to the elbow joint, not enough to break it, but enough to make Darren scream. "You said he deserved to die." Nathan's voice was conversational now, almost gentle. "You smiled about it." "Fuck you." Darren spat blood onto the pavement. "My brother's gonna kill you. Maurice is gonna fucking end you." Nathan applied more pressure. The elbow joint popped, partially dislocated. Darren's scream echoed off the hospital walls. "I counted 3 bones that need to break," Nathan said. "One for each word. Deserves to die. This is number 1. He relocated the elbow with a sharp movement, then moved to Darren's left arm. The second break was a clean fracture of the radius. Painful, but treatable. Darren was sobbing now, all his swagger gone. "That's 2. Nathan stood and rolled Darren onto his back. The bigger man's face was a mask of blood and tears. "Please," Darren whimpered. "Please, man, I'm sorry." Nathan stomped down on Darren's left ankle. The crack was audible even over Darren screaming. 3. Security guards were running across the parking lot now, shouting. Nathan raised his hands and stepped back from Darren's writhing form. "Call the police," Nathan said calmly, "and tell them to get a statement from my son about how his stepfather broke both his arms while he was drunk." The police station holding cell was cleaner than Nathan expected. He sat on the metal bench, hands folded in his lap, breathing steadily. He'd been here 4 hours. They'd taken a statement, photographed his undamaged knuckles. Years of proper technique meant minimal injury to himself, and charged him with assault and battery. The door opened and a public defender walked in, a young woman named Liliana Luna with sharp eyes and an overstuffed briefcase. "Mr. Horn, I'm going to be straight with you. You're looking at serious charges. Mr. Parker's attorney is already talking about pressing maximum charges. Did you see my son's medical file?" "I did. And yes, CPS is investigating Mr. Parker for child abuse. But that doesn't give you the right to—" "I'm not arguing that I had the right," Nathan interrupted. "I'm saying I don't regret it. What's my bail?" $50,000. "You have the money. I have a bar worth $200,000 and no mortgage." "Yeah, I can make bail." Liliana studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Parker's brother visited him at the hospital. Maurice Parker. Do you know that name?" Nathan's expression didn't change. "Should I? He runs the Los Muertos gang on the south side. 27 arrests, 3 convictions, suspected in multiple homicides. Mr. Horn, you need to understand what you've stepped into." "I understand perfectly." Nathan met her eyes. "My son's arms were broken by a drunk piece of shit who said he deserved to die. I understand that part very clearly. Maurice Parker made threats against you. Explicit threats. The hospital security heard him. Good. Let him come." Liliana's expression shifted from professional concern to something else, maybe recognition. "You were military. Army Ranger. 75th Regiment. 12 years as a hand-to-hand combat instructor at Fort Benning. That's going to be a problem for you in court. The prosecution will argue you used excessive force, that you're a trained weapon. I broke 3 of his bones. He broke 2 of my sons. I was merciful." The door opened again, and Charlie Gates appeared, looking harried. "Boss, I got your bail money, but there's guys outside asking about you. Rough-looking dudes." Nathan stood. "Los Muertos. How'd you know?" "Lucky guess." Nathan turned to Liliana. "Get me out of here, and pull whatever strings you can to keep Jacob away from his mother until this is sorted out. Already filed the emergency custody motion. Hearings tomorrow at 9. Liliana hesitated. Mr. Horn, these gang members, you need to take them seriously. I always take threats seriously. Nathan smiled without warmth. I just don't let them dictate my actions. The bail process took another hour. When Nathan finally walked out of the station at dawn, Charlie was waiting by his truck, looking nervous. They were here until about 20 minutes ago, Charlie said. 3 guys. One of them had a teardrop tattoo and a gun stuck in his waistband. They asked where you lived, where the bar was, all kinds of shit. What did you tell them? Nothing. I'm not stupid. Charlie handed over Nathan's keys. But boss, maybe you should skip town for a while. Let this cool down. Can't. Custody hearing in 3 hours. Nathan climbed into his truck. Go home, Charlie. Take a few days off with pay. And don't come to the bar until I call you. What are you gonna do? Nathan started the engine. Whatever I have to. He drove to his apartment above the bar, checking his mirrors constantly. No tails that he could see. The sun was coming up over the city, painting everything in shades of amber and gray. Nathan's phone had 17 missed calls, 12 from Josie, 5 from numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them all and called the one person he trusted completely. Micah Trujillo answered on the second ring. Nate? Jesus, man, I heard about Jacob. How is he? Stable. Both arms broken. I put the guy in the hospital. Good. Want me to finish the job? Micah had been Nathan's squad leader in Afghanistan, a career ranger who'd retired as a master sergeant and now ran a security consulting firm in Denver. But more importantly, Micah was the kind of friend who'd help you hide a body without asking questions. Not yet, but his brother's a gang leader, Los Muertos. They're making moves. How many guys? Unknown. They showed up at the police station while I was being processed. You at your place? Yeah. I'm 12 hours out. Can you hold until then? Nathan looked at the sunrise and thought about his son's broken arms, about Darren's smile, about the way Jacob had apologized as if any of this was his fault. Yeah, he said finally. I can hold. He hung up and went inside to shower and change. The custody hearing was in 2 hours, and Nathan needed to look like a responsible parent, not a man planning a war. But war was coming. He could feel it in his bones, in the old instincts that 12 years of training had burned into his DNA. Maurice Parker had made the biggest mistake of his life when his brother touched Nathan's son. Now, Nathan just had to make sure Maurice understood that before the end. The family court building smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. Nathan sat outside courtroom 3B in his only suit, a navy blue number he'd worn to his father's funeral 3 years ago. Liliana Luna sat beside him, reviewing papers with sharp, economical movements. Josie arrived 15 minutes late with a different lawyer, a slick-looking man named Augustin Stewart who wore gold cufflinks and an expression of practiced sympathy. Josie wouldn't meet Nathan's eyes. She looked exhausted, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. All rise, the bailiff announced. Judge Whitney Gallagher was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a reputation for no-nonsense rulings. She reviewed the emergency custody petition with a frown that deepened with every page. Mr. Stewart, your client's current husband is in a hospital with multiple fractures sustained in an altercation with Mr. Horn. He's also under investigation by Child Protective Services for allegedly breaking the minor child's arms. Is that correct? Your Honor, the circumstances are complicated. It's a yes or no question, counselor. Yes, Your Honor, but... And Mr. Horn responded to his son's hospitalization by assaulting Mr. Parker in a hospital parking lot. Also correct. Liliana stood. Your Honor, if I may, Mr. Horn was informed at the hospital that his son had bilateral arm fractures consistent with forceful twisting. Mr. Parker was intoxicated and, according to multiple witnesses, including hospital staff, made statements indicating he had intentionally harmed the child and expressing the view that the child deserved to die. Mr. Horn's response, while legally problematic, was that of a father protecting his child from an immediate threat. Judge Gallagher turned to Josie. Mrs. Parker, what's your position on this? Josie stood slowly. Your Honor, I didn't know Darren had been drinking. I was at work. When I got the call about Jacob, I thought it was an accident. Do you believe your husband intentionally harmed your son? The courtroom went silent. Nathan watched Josie's face cycle through emotions: fear, guilt, denial, and finally something that looked like resignation. "I don't know," she whispered. "But he's been scared lately. I thought he was just adjusting to the new marriage, but what, Mrs. Parker? He's been flinching around Darren. And there were bruises last month that Darren said came from roughhousing." Tears started down her cheeks. "Oh God, what have I done?" Judge Gallagher's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Stewart, does your client oppose temporary full custody being granted to Mr. Horn pending the CPS investigation?" Augustine Stewart leaned over to whisper to Josie. She shook her head firmly. "No, Your Honor. Mrs. Parker agrees that Jacob should stay with his father until this is resolved." "Very well. Temporary full custody to Mr. Horn. Mrs. Parker will have supervised visitation rights pending the outcome of the investigation. We'll reconvene in 30 days. The gavel cracked. Next case. Outside the courtroom, Josie finally approached Nathan. Her lawyer tried to pull her back, but she shook him off. "Nate, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Nathan looked at the woman he'd once loved, the woman who'd given him his son, and felt nothing but cold distance. "You married a man who beat our son, Josie. You didn't see the signs, or you ignored them. Either way, you failed Jacob. I know, fresh tears, but you need to be careful. Darren's brother Maurice, he's dangerous. He came by the house this morning making threats." "What kind of threats?" "He said you broke his baby brother's bones, and he's going to break everything you love. He said it was going to be slow." "Nathan, he scared me more than anyone ever has. These aren't normal people. I know what they are." Nathan started walking toward the parking garage. "Go home, Josie. Stay away from Maurice and stay away from Darren. If you're smart, you'll file for divorce today. I already called a lawyer." Nathan paused, looking back at her. "Good. That's good." He drove straight to St. Catherine's Hospital. Jacob was being discharged into his care, and Nathan had already arranged for his son to stay with his sister Beulah Lyons in Portland for a few weeks, far away from whatever was about to happen. Reba Cervantes was waiting with Jacob when Nathan arrived. His son looked small and fragile in a wheelchair, both arms in bright blue casts. "Dad!" Jacob's face lit up despite the obvious pain. Nathan knelt down and hugged him carefully. "Hey, buddy, ready to get out of here? Are you in trouble?" "Because of me?" "No, because of Darren. And that's not your fault, Jake. None of this is your fault. Darren called me weak. He said you were weak too." Nathan looked into his son's eyes, his mother's eyes, bright and full of fear and hope. "Jake, there's different kinds of strength. The kind that matters isn't about muscles or fighting. It's about standing up when you're scared, about protecting people who can't protect themselves. You were strong when you asked to call me, even though you knew it would make Darren angry. That took real courage. He said I deserved to die." The words hit Nathan like a punch. Hearing them from Jacob's mouth, in that small, scared voice, made something crack in Nathan's chest. He was wrong. You deserve everything good this world has to offer, and I'm going to make sure you get it. Reba wheeled Jacob out to Nathan's truck. As they loaded him into the back seat, carefully, so carefully, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot 3 spaces down. Nathan saw the gang tattoos before he saw the faces. 4 men climbed out, moving with the aggressive, casual stance of people used to intimidating others. The leader was tall and lean, with a shaved head and a sprawling neck tattoo that read Muertos. Maurice Parker. He looked exactly like his brother would have in 10 years if Darren hadn't chosen the easy route of steroids and prison workouts. Same bone structure, same cold eyes. But Maurice moved differently. Calculated, controlled, dangerous in a way Darren had only pretended to be. "Nathan Horn," Maurice said. "It wasn't a question. We need to have a conversation. Not now. My son's in the car." "Yeah, I can see that. Cute kid. Shame about his arms." Maurice smiled without warmth. "My brother's in ICU. 3 breaks, partial dislocation, severe facial trauma. You did a number on him. He touched my son, so I heard. Thing is, Darren's blood. Family. And nobody puts their hands on my family without consequences." Maurice gestured to the men behind him. "This is Quentin, Enrique, and Van. They work for me. And right now, they're very interested in making you understand how serious this situation is. Nathan positioned himself between the SUV and his truck. Walk away. This doesn't have to escalate. Oh, but it does. See, word gets out that some ex-military motherfucker can beat down a Parker and walk away. That's bad for business. Bad for reputation. Maurice took a step closer. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to my brother. You're going to pay his medical bills. And you're going to give me $50,000 for my trouble. And if I don't, Morris's smile widened. Then your bar burns down. Your apartment burns down. Maybe you have a sister? Beulah Lyons lives in Portland? Maybe something happens to her. Maybe something happens to your boy there with the broken arms. Nathan's vision went red around the edges. Every fiber of his training screamed at him to attack, to end these threats permanently. But Jacob was 3 feet away, scared and helpless. "You've got 48 hours, Maurice continued. Apologize, pay up, or suffer. Your choice. He turned and walked back to the SUV with his crew. Nathan memorized every detail, the license plate, the faces, the way each man moved. Quentin favored his left leg. Enrique kept his right hand near his waistband where a gun likely sat. Van was built like a linebacker, but moved like someone who'd done time and learned to be cautious. "Dad!" Jacob's voice was small and scared. "Who was that?" Nathan turned back to his son and forced his expression to soften. "Nobody important, buddy. Let's get you to Aunt Beulah's house." But as he drove out of the parking lot, Nathan was already planning. Maurice Parker had made 2 critical mistakes. First, he'd threatened Nathan's son. Second, he'd given Nathan a 48-hour timeline. That was more than enough time for a man like Nathan Horn to prepare for war. The drive to Portland was 6 hours. Nathan used every minute to think, to plan, to remember his training. By the time he delivered Jacob safely to his sister's house, a cozy suburban home where Beulah promised to keep Jacob entertained and safe, Nathan had the skeleton of a plan. Micah Trujillo was waiting at Nathan's apartment when he got back to the city at midnight. The retired master sergeant looked exactly as Nathan remembered, compact and dangerous, with gray threading through his dark hair and scars that told stories he'd never share with civilians. "Good to see you, brother," Micah said, pulling Nathan into a hard hug. "Thanks for coming. You kidding? After all the shit we've been through." Micah walked into the apartment and set down a heavy duffel bag. "I brought party favors." Nathan knew what that meant. He unzipped the bag and found a small arsenal, 2 SIG Sauer P320S, a Remington 870 shotgun, ammunition, body armor, night vision goggles, and enough surveillance equipment to run a small CIA operation. "Micah, I can't ask you to." "You didn't ask. I volunteered." Micah's expression went hard. "These gang bangers threatened your boy. That means they threatened my nephew, far as I'm concerned. So what's the play?" Nathan spread out everything he knew. Maurice Parker, Los Muertos gang, estimated 20 to 30 members operating out of the South Side. Drug distribution, protection rackets, suspected contract killings. Maurice himself had spent time in prison for assault and weapons charges, but had gotten smart. Now, he kept his hands clean while his crew did the dirty work. 48-hour deadline, Nathan said. "Maurice expects me to fold. He thinks I'm just some washed-up veteran who got lucky with his brother. So we hit him first. Not yet. We gather intelligence. Find weaknesses. Maurice made this about my son, which means he doesn't understand what line he crossed." Nathan looked at his old squad leader. "We're not just going to beat them. We're going to dismantle them piece by piece until Maurice Parker wishes he'd never heard my name." Micah grinned. "Now you're talking my language. Where do we start?" "The bar. Los Muertos runs protection on small businesses in that neighborhood. I never paid, which means they know I'm not easily intimidated. But I bet they have surveillance on the place. We use that. They work through the night, planning and preparing. By dawn, Nathan had a list of targets, a timeline, and a growing sense of cold purpose. This wasn't about revenge. Revenge was emotional, sloppy. This was about elimination of a threat. Maurice Parker and his gang were problems that needed solving, and Nathan had 12 years of training in solving exactly these kinds of problems. The 48 hours started ticking. and Nathan Horn was going hunting. The south side of the city looked different in daylight. Less menacing, almost normal. Nathan drove past the known Los Muertos hangouts with Micah in the passenger seat, both of them wearing civilian clothes and baseball caps, looking like just two guys out running errands. There, Micah said, pointing to a garage with 3 men standing outside. That's on their chop shops. Nathan made a mental note of the location. They spent the next 6 hours mapping territory. Bars where gang members drank, houses where they likely lived, the warehouse where Maurice supposedly ran his operations. By evening, they had a comprehensive picture. 22 confirmed members, Micah said, reviewing their notes back at the apartment. Maurice, his lieutenants Quentin Parks and Enrique Wolf, and Van Heath as muscle. The rest are soldiers, young guys doing grunt work. Morris's weakness? Pride. He's careful but arrogant. Thinks he's untouchable because he's gotten away with it this long. Micah pulled up arrest records on his laptop. He's also loyal to his crew. That's his blind spot. Nathan thought about his son, about the way Jacob had apologized, as if having broken arms was somehow his fault. He thought about Morris's threat, about something happening to Jacob. We separate him from his crew, Nathan said. Pick them off one by one. Make him paranoid. Make him sloppy. That's a long game. We've got time. Jacob's safe in Portland. The custody case is in my favor. I can afford to be patient. What about the 48-hour deadline? Nathan smiled without humor. I'm going to meet it, just not the way Maurice expects. The next morning, Nathan drove to the warehouse where Maurice ran his operations. It was an old industrial building near the docks, surrounded by a chain-link fence with obvious security cameras. He parked across the street and waited. At 11 a.m., Morris's black SUV pulled up. The gang leader climbed out with Quentin and Enrique flanking him. They walked inside like they owned the world. Nathan gave them 30 minutes, then walked up to the front door and knocked. The door opened and Van Heath loomed there, blocking the entrance with his linebacker bulk. The fuck you want? To talk to Maurice. He's busy. Tell him Nathan Horn is here with his answer. Van's eyes narrowed, but he stepped back and pulled out a phone. 2 minutes later, Nathan was inside a cavernous space filled with stolen goods, electronics, car parts, boxes of pharmaceuticals. Maurice sat behind a metal desk at the far end, flanked by his lieutenants. Well, Maurice said, didn't expect you to come here personally. Takes balls. Or stupidity, Enrique added with a laugh. Nathan walked forward slowly, hands visible at his sides. You gave me 48 hours. I'm here to give you my answer. Smart man. So you got my money? No, I don't have your money. I don't owe you anything. The room went silent. Morris's smile faded. Then why are you here? To make you an offer. Nathan stopped 10 feet from a desk. Your brother broke my son's arms while he was drunk. I responded proportionally. 3 breaks for threatening my son's life. We're even. Walk away now and this ends. Maurice laughed. A harsh, ugly sound. Walk away? You think you can come into my place and dictate terms? I think you don't understand who you're dealing with. I know exactly who you are. Nathan Horn, 38 years old, former Army Ranger, owns a shitty bar, divorced, 1 kid. I know where you sleep, where you work, what you eat for breakfast. Maurice stood. You're nobody. A small-time operator playing at being tough. I was a combat instructor for 12 years. I trained soldiers how to kill efficiently with their bare hands. I've operated in 6 countries you can't spell and done things that would give you nightmares. Nathan's voice never rose above conversational. Your brother was easy. He telegraphed every movement. You're smarter, I'll give you that. But your crew? They're sloppy. Quentin keeps adjusting that piece in his waistband like he's afraid it'll fall out. Enrique favors his right side because he took a bullet in the left shoulder. The scar tissue shows when he moves. Van's strong, but slow. And you, Maurice? You're sitting behind a desk surrounded by stolen merchandise in a building with exactly 3 exits and security cameras that haven't been checked for blind spots in months. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Is that a threat? Morris's hand moved toward a drawer. It's information. You want to know who you're dealing with. Now you know. Nathan turned to leave. My offer stands for 24 hours. After that, I stop being reasonable. "You're not walking out of here," Maurice said. Van detained him. Van Heath moved with surprising speed for his size, reaching for Nathan's arm. Nathan pivoted, trapped Van's wrist, and used the big man's momentum to send him crashing into a stack of boxes. Before anyone could react, Nathan was out the door and jogging to his truck. Gunshots cracked behind him, wild, panic shots that hit nothing. Nathan's truck roared to life, and he was gone before Morris's crew could mobilize. Micah was waiting 2 blocks away in a rental car. "How'd it go?" "He won't back down." "Good. Neither will we." Phase 1 of Nathan's plan had just begun, and Maurice Parker was about to learn that sometimes the deadliest enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose. The first attack came at 2 a.m. that night. Nathan had been expecting it, so when a Molotov cocktail shattered through McGreevy's Tavern's front window, he was ready. The fire suppression system activated immediately. Nathan had upgraded it 2 weeks ago, right after the hospital incident. The flames died in seconds. Nathan, watching from a rooftop across the street with night vision goggles, saw the arsonist clearly. A young Los Muertos soldier named Danny, or barely 20 years old with the gang's tattoos fresh on his neck. "Got him," Micah said from beside Nathan. He was filming everything with a night vision camera. "That's enough for the police. We're not calling the police." "What then?" Nathan watched Danny run back to a waiting car, driven by another gang member. "We follow him home." They tailed the car to a rundown apartment building on the south side. Danny went inside alone, the driver leaving him there. Nathan and Micah waited until the lights in a third-floor apartment clicked on. "He lives with his mother," Micah said, checking property records on his phone. "Nadia McKee, 52, works 2 jobs. Nathan thought about that. A kid in a gang, probably thinking it was his only option, living with a mother who was working herself to death, trying to keep him out of trouble. "We're not touching him," Nathan decided. "He just tried to burn down your bar. He's a kid following orders. Maurice is the problem." Nathan lowered the binoculars. "We're going after the lieutenants. Cut off the head, the body dies." They spent the next 3 nights gathering intelligence. Quentin Parks lived in a nice house in the suburbs, paid for with drug money, no doubt. He had a wife and 2 daughters. Enrique Wolf lived alone in a condo downtown, expensive cars, and a lifestyle that screamed money laundering. Van Heath rented a room above a gym where he worked as a trainer during the day. "Quentin's the weak link," Micah said. "Family man. He's got something to lose." Nathan agreed. On the 4th night, they followed Quentin from the warehouse to his suburban house. They waited until he was inside, lights off, everyone asleep. Then Nathan knocked on the door. Quentin answered in his boxers, a gun in his hand, eyes bleary with sleep. When he saw Nathan standing on his porch with Micah behind him, he raised the weapon. "Don't," Nathan said calmly. "Your wife and daughters are asleep upstairs. You fire that gun, they wake up to police and questions you don't want to answer." "How'd you find me?" "I was a combat instructor, not an idiot. Can we talk inside?" Quentin's hand shook slightly. "You got some balls coming here. Actually, I've got information you need. It's about Maurice." That got his attention. Quentin lowered the gun slightly. "What kind of information?" "The kind that saves your life. Let us in or don't, but we're having this conversation one way or another." Quentin hesitated, then stepped back. They walked into a living room that looked achingly normal. Family photos on the walls, kids' toys scattered around, a wife who worked as a school teacher according to the background check Micah had run. "You've got 2 minutes, Quentin said. "Maurice sent a kid to burn down my bar," Nathan began. "Young guy, barely 20. He failed. Next, Maurice will escalate, probably a direct attack on me or someone I care about. When I retaliate, and I will, people will die. Cops will get involved. The FBI's been watching Los Muertos for 18 months. Micah here has a contact who confirmed it. When this war gets hot, everyone with ties to the gang goes down." Quentin's face went pale. "You're lying. Your wife's name is Josie." "No, wait, that's my ex-wife." "Your wife is Marquita Ware, school teacher at Jefferson Elementary. Your daughters are 8 and 6. Soccer and ballet." Nathan leaned forward. "When the FBI raid your house, they'll be home. They'll see their father arrested. Marquita will lose her job. Your girls will grow up with a father in federal prison." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're not stupid. You know Maurice is reckless. His pride is going to get everyone killed or arrested. Nathan stood. I'm offering you a way out. You testify against Maurice, turn state's evidence, and I make sure the FBI knows you cooperated. You do some time, maybe, but not life. And your family stays safe. Maurice would kill me. Maurice is going to be dead or in prison within 2 weeks. Your choice is whether you're standing beside him when it happens. Nathan and Micah left. Quentin stood in his living room, gun hanging loose in his hand, looking like a man watching his world crumble. Think he'll flip? Micah asked in the car. Maybe, but even if he doesn't, we've planted doubt. Morris's crew is going to start questioning his leadership. Nathan checked his phone, a text from his sister confirming Jacob was doing well, laughing at movies, and eating too much ice cream. That's when we hit them for real. The next move came from Maurice. Nathan's truck tires were slashed, his apartment doors spray-painted with threats. 2 of Los Muertos soldiers showed up at the bar during opening hours and tried to intimidate customers. Nathan had them removed by off-duty cops he'd befriended over the years, men who appreciated his military service and hated gangs. But the escalation was building. Both sides were circling, looking for openings. Then Nathan got a call from Liliana Luna, his lawyer. The CPS investigation wrapped up, she said. Darren Parker has been charged with felony child abuse. He's out on bail, but the evidence is overwhelming. Jacob's statements, the medical reports, witness testimony from hospital. He's going away for years. Good. There's more. Josie filed for divorce. She's cooperating fully with prosecutors. She wants full immunity in exchange for testifying about Darren and Morris's criminal activities. Nathan sat up straight. What does she know? Apparently Darren bragged about gang business when he was drunk. Josie kept notes, dates, names, details about drug deals and extortion. It's not enough to bring down the whole organization, but it's enough to pressure Maurice. Send it to me. Nathan, if you're planning something, I'm planning to end this. One way or another. He hung up and looked at Micah. Josie's turning on Maurice. We can use that. Ow! Nathan smiled grimly. We make Maurice think his whole crew is betraying him. Paranoia is a weapon. We just have to aim it. Over the next 48 hours, Nathan and Micah orchestrated a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Anonymous tips to Maurice about Quentin meeting with federal agents. False tips, but convincing ones. A planted bug in the warehouse that Morris's crew found, making them think someone was informing. Stage conversations near Los Muertos hangouts where undercover cops were heard discussing their source inside Parker's organization. Morris's response was predictable: violence. He accused Quentin of betrayal during a meeting. Nathan knew because Van Heath, who'd been left out of Morris's inner circle after Nathan embarrassed him at the warehouse, had started feeding information to Micah in exchange for cash. They're falling apart, Van said during a clandestine meeting in a parking garage. Maurice beat the shit out of Quentin, said he was going to kill anyone who betrayed him. Half the crew is scared, the other half is planning to run. What about Enrique? Still loyal. He's Morris's right hand, but even he's starting to question things. Nathan nodded. Tell Maurice I want to meet. Neutral ground. Just him and me. He'll never go for it. Tell him I have information about who's really betraying him. Tell him if he doesn't meet me, everyone he loves will be in federal custody by tomorrow. Van looked skeptical, but agreed to pass along the message. 2 hours later, Nathan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number with an address and a time. Midnight. An abandoned factory on the edge of town. It's a trap, Micah said immediately. Of course it is. That's why you're going to be on Overwatch with that Barrett M82 you definitely didn't bring across state lines. Micah grinned. I would never do something illegal like that. They prepared carefully. Body armor, weapons, extraction plans, fallback positions. Nathan had learned in Afghanistan that walking into a trap was fine as long as you knew it was a trap and had your own trap ready. At 11:30 p.m., Nathan drove to the factory alone. Micah was already in position on a rooftop 300 meters away, invisible in the darkness with his sniper rifle and night vision equipment. Maurice was waiting inside with Enrique and 3 other soldiers. No sign of Quentin or Van. You came, Maurice said. He sounded surprised. You offered a meeting? I'm here. Nathan stopped 20 feet away. Where's your crew falling apart? What are you talking about? Quentin. He hasn't been seen in 2 days. Van's selling information to anyone who'll pay. Your drug shipments are being intercepted. The FBI knows your schedule. Nathan watched Maurice's face. Someone's betraying you, Maurice. Multiple someones. Your organization is collapsing. You're lying. Am I? Then why did Quentin's wife file a police report yesterday, saying she hasn't seen him? Why did 3 of your soldiers disappear? Why are the feds watching your warehouse right now? Maurice pulled a gun. You did this. You turned my people against me. I didn't have to. You did that yourself when you threatened my son. Nathan kept his hands visible. But I'm here to offer you something. What? Prison. You turn yourself in, plead guilty to assault, extortion, drug trafficking. You do 20 years. Or you keep fighting and everyone you know dies, including your brother Darren, who's already facing charges and will definitely take a deal to reduce his sentence by testifying against you. Maurice's hand tightened on the gun. You're insane. I'm a father. You threatened my child. There's no version of this where you win. Nathan took a step forward. The question is how many people die before you accept that. Enrique raised his weapon. Boss, let me kill this motherfucker. Wait, Maurice said. His eyes were calculating now, looking for angles. You said you had information about who's betraying me. I do. Want to know who it is? Tell me. Everyone. Nathan smiled coldly. Quentin's talking to the FBI, has been for 3 weeks. Van's been selling your schedule to rival gangs. Even Enrique here has been skimming money from drug sales. Enrique exploded. That's bullshit. Is it? Nathan pulled out his phone and showed a photograph, doctored but convincing, of Enrique meeting with a known rival gang member. Taken 4 days ago. How much did they pay you, Enrique? That's not real. Maurice doesn't know that, Nathan said calmly. And that's when everything fell apart. Maurice turned on Enrique, paranoia and rage twisting his features. Enrique raised his gun defensively. The other soldiers didn't know who to point their weapons at. Nathan dove for cover as the first shot rang out. Micah's voice crackled in Nathan's earpiece. I've got multiple targets. Say the word. Only if I'm in danger. Let them burn each other. The gunfight lasted 30 seconds. When it ended, Enrique was dead, Maurice was wounded in the shoulder, and 2 soldiers were running for their lives. Nathan emerged from behind a concrete pillar with his weapon drawn. Maurice lay on the ground, bleeding, his gun 6 feet away. It's over, Nathan said. Fuck you. I gave you a chance to walk away. You chose this. Nathan kicked the gun further away. Darren hurt my son. You threatened to hurt him more. Everything that's happened since then, that's on you. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Micah had called them the moment shooting started. You set this whole thing up, Maurice gasped. The paranoia, the betrayals. I told you. I was a combat instructor. I taught soldiers how to break enemy formations from the inside. You never had a chance. Nathan holstered his weapon and started walking away. Enjoy prison, Maurice. Maybe you and your brother can share a cell. He met Micah at the extraction point 2 blocks away. They disappeared into the night as police swarmed the factory. 3 weeks later, Nathan sat in a booth at McGreevy's tavern watching the evening news. Maurice Parker was being sentenced to 30 years for murder. Enrique's death, caught on Nathan's phone camera and showing Maurice firing first. Darren Parker had taken a plea deal, 15 years for felony child abuse. Quentin Parks had indeed turned state's evidence and was in witness protection with his family. Los Muertos was shattered, its remaining members arrested or scattered. Jacob came running into the bar, his cast finally removed, his arms thin but healing. Dad, look, I can move them again. Nathan scooped his son into a careful hug. That's great, buddy. How do they feel? Weird, but good. Jacob hesitated. Did you hear about Darren? I did. I'm glad he's going to jail. Does that make me bad? No, Jake. It makes you human. Nathan ruffled his son's hair. He hurt you. It's okay to be glad there are consequences. Josie appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain. She'd lost weight, looked older, but there was something steadier in her eyes now. Nate, can we talk? Nathan nodded and walked outside with her while Jacob played video games in the back office. I testified today, Josie said. Against Darren. It's really over. Good. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not seeing what he was. For putting Jacob in danger. Nathan studied his ex-wife. They'd loved each other once, built a life together, created a son. That had to count for something. You made mistakes. So did I. Marrying you when I was still dealing with PTSD, working too much, not being present enough. We both failed, but we can both do better. He gestured back toward the bar. Jacob needs his mother. Not the one who married Darren, but the woman you were before. Can you be her again? I'm trying. Josie wiped her eyes. The therapist says I have codependency issues. I'm working on it. Keep working. Jacob deserves parents who have their shit together. What about you? Are you okay? I heard about the fight at the factory. Nathan thought about Maurice Parker bleeding on concrete, about Enrique's body, about the fear in Quentin's eyes when Nathan showed up at his house. He thought about the darkness he'd tapped into, the cold efficiency that had let him dismantle a gang piece by piece. I'm okay, he lied. I did what I had to do. Josie left, and Nathan went back inside. Micah was at the bar nursing a beer, watching sports highlights. You sticking around? Nathan asked. For a while. Got some vacation time, saved up. Micah glanced at him. You really okay? Honestly? I don't know. I set out to protect my son and ended up orchestrating the destruction of a criminal organization. People died. I manipulated, lied, and used every dirty trick I learned in the military. You protected your family. I know, but I also liked it. The planning, the execution, watching everything fall into place. Nathan poured himself a drink. That should scare me, right? You're asking the wrong guy. I've killed people professionally for 20 years. Micah raised his glass. Here's to doing bad things for good reasons. They drank in silence. 6 months later, Nathan stood in family court again. This time the hearing was to finalize the custody arrangement. Josie had completed court-mandated therapy, held down a steady job, and proved herself capable of supervised visitation that had gradually expanded to unsupervised time. Judge Gallagher reviewed the case files with her characteristic thoroughness. Mr. Horn, Mrs. Morgan. She's gone back to her maiden name. The court has reviewed all materials including therapy reports, home studies, and Jacob's own preferences as expressed to the child psychologist. She looked over her reading glasses at both of them. Joint custody with primary physical custody to Mr. Horn. Mrs. Morgan will have alternating weekends and Wednesday evenings. Does this arrangement suit both parties? Nathan and Josie both agreed. Outside the courthouse, Jacob ran to both of them with a gap-toothed smile. He'd grown 2 inches, was back in school, and, according to his therapist, was processing the trauma with age-appropriate resilience. Can we get ice cream? Jacob asked. Nathan looked at Josie, who nodded. They walked together to the ice cream shop 3 blocks away. Not a family anymore, but something new. 2 people united by love for their child and determination to do right by him. McGreevy's Tavern was thriving. Word had spread about what Nathan had done. Not the details, but enough. The neighborhood respected him, protected him. His bar became a place where veterans gathered, where people who'd been victimized by gang violence felt safe, where community mattered. Micah stayed on as silent partner and head of security. He hired other veterans, men and women who needed purpose and found it in protecting something good. Nathan never went looking for violence again. But violence has a way of finding certain people, and when it did, Nathan was ready. 2 years later, when a domestic abuser threatened a waitress who worked at his bar, Nathan had a quiet conversation with a man in the parking lot. The abuser left town and never came back. 3 years after that, when a corrupt city councilman tried to seize Nathan's property through an illegal eminent domain claim, Nathan used everything he'd learned about leverage and pressure to expose the councilman's bribery schemes. The councilman resigned in disgrace. People started calling Nathan when they had problems the law couldn't or wouldn't solve. He never advertised his services, never asked for payment. But quietly, carefully, Nathan Horn became someone you went to when you needed justice that the system couldn't provide. Jacob grew up knowing his father was unusual, that people treated him with a mixture of respect and wariness. On his 16th birthday, Nathan took him camping and told him the full story of what had happened with Darren and Maurice. "You killed people," Jacob said quietly. "Not directly, but my actions led to deaths." "Yes. Do you regret it?" Nathan looked at his son, almost as tall as him now, strong and confident, with his mother's kind eyes and Nathan's stubborn jaw. "I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret protecting you. I'd do it again, Jake. Every time." Jacob was quiet for a long moment. "Darren said I was weak, that I deserved to die. I remember, but I'm not weak. You taught me that. Being strong doesn't mean being violent. It means standing up even when you're scared. It means protecting people who can't protect themselves. It means doing what's right even when it's hard." Nathan pulled his son into a hug. "Exactly, and you're the strongest person I know." 20 years later, Nathan Horn was 58 years old and still running McGreevy's Tavern. Jacob had become a social worker, dedicating his life to helping children in crisis. Micah had retired fully and spent his days fishing and telling war stories that might or might not be true. One evening, a young man came into the bar. He had gang tattoos on his neck, old ones, faded and covered with new ink of flowers and crosses. Nathan recognized him after a moment. Danny, or the kid who'd thrown a Molotov cocktail through his window 20 years ago. "Mr. Horn," Danny's voice shook. "I don't know if you remember me. I remember. I came to apologize. For the fire. For everything. Maurice Parker recruited me when I was 17. Told me it was the only way to make money, to be someone. I was stupid. You were a kid. I was old enough to know better." Danny pulled out a business card. "I run a youth center now. Help kids stay out of gangs. I wanted you to know that what you did, taking down Maurice, it saved lives. Mine included." Nathan took the card. "You did that yourself. You made the choice to change. But you gave me the chance. Los Muertos fell apart, and guys like me had to find another path." Danny extended his hand. "Thank you." They shook hands. The man who'd nearly destroyed Nathan's bar and the man who destroyed a gang empire to protect his son. After Danny left, Nathan stood behind his bar and looked around at the walls covered in photos. Jacob's graduation, Micah's retirement party, veterans reunions, community events. A life built not on violence, but on the aftermath of violence, on the choice to protect rather than destroy. His phone buzzed. A text from Jacob. "Dad, Sarah and I have news. We're pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather." Nathan smiled, feeling something warm and genuine spread through his chest. A grandchild, a new generation, a chance to teach someone else about strength and kindness, about protecting the weak and standing up to bullies, about being the kind of person who makes the world better rather than worse. He texted back, "Congratulations. I love you." And in that moment, Nathan Horn knew that everything he'd done, all the violence, all the darkness, all the nights spent planning and fighting and surviving, had been worth it, because his son was safe, happy, and about to become a father himself. Because the cycle of violence had ended with Nathan's generation, not continued to Jacob's. That was the real victory. Not defeating Maurice Parker or protecting his bar or becoming someone people feared. The victory was in Jacob's laugh, in his choice to help children instead of hurt them, in the fact that he'd grown up knowing he was loved and protected and valued. Maurice Parker died in prison at 61, shivved by a rival gang member over a dispute about cigarettes. Darren Parker got out after 12 years on good behavior and died of a heart attack 2 years later, alone in a studio apartment. Nathan Horn lived to 83, surrounded by family, Jacob and his wife, 3 grandchildren who adored him, Josie who'd become a friend again after years of distance, and Micah who stayed loyal until the end. At his funeral, 100 people came to pay respects. Veterans, bar regulars, people whose lives he'd touched or saved or improved. Jacob gave a eulogy and told the story of his father's greatest lesson. Strength isn't about how hard you can hit. It's about what you're willing to endure to protect the people you love. My father was the strongest man I ever knew, and I'm proud to be his son. They buried Nathan Horn with full military honors. 3 volley shots. Taps. A folded flag presented to Jacob. And in the end, The legacy Nathan left wasn't one of violence or revenge. It was one of protection, of a father's love, of the unshakable principle that some lines can never be crossed, and those who cross them will face consequences they can't imagine. Maurice Parker had called Nathan's son weak and said he deserved to die. Maurice died in prison, forgotten and unmourned. Nathan died surrounded by love, having built something that would last generations. In the end, that was the only victory that mattered.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.